I don't think there's ever been a better representation of yin and yang for two products that are effectively for the same category from the same company, but are equally confusing and different from each other. So today in this video, we're going to be comparing the Pulse Explore wireless earbuds to the InZone Buds, which both of them work on PlayStation and PC and other devices, but we're going to get into the complexities of all that because they do so in a very different manner. Now, neither of these were sent to me for review. I purchased both of them using money from yours, believe it or not. So anytime you use Amazon affiliate links, I take that revenue to look for other products to purchase to help not only support the channel, but to provide more content and help educate you on my take on whatever it is I'm covering. So whether it was sent to me for review or not, it won't affect what I say about it. I have had stuff sent to me for review before that I was very happy about and enjoyed, and stuff that I didn't like. And I use scientific measurements and objective stuff that takes my opinion out of it as well, so you don't have to worry about me having some kind of secret hidden agenda. I never made this channel with the goal of maximizing money. It's just maximizing honesty, and I hope that's what fuels the growth. So by the end of the review, if you like what you see or you want to purchase either of these or other products I mentioned in the video, I will have links in the description so you can do so, and that will support the channel. Otherwise, purchase it wherever you like. Now, I've had these for a while. I didn't review these right away because, frankly, when I buy things, I'm not on a timetable. I don't have to satisfy any particular, arrangement like, yes, I'll review it in 30 days. And it was also delayed because, unfortunately, if you follow any of my socials, Twitter or X now, my dog passed away about a week ago, close to it. I don't even know now, but it was pretty devastating for our family. So wasn't really in the right mindset. May not have the same energy in this review, but anyway, getting back to it. So let's talk about what makes these similar and what makes them wildly different. Starting with the battery life, you get 5 hours on the Pulse Explorer plus an additional 10 with the case. It's a rather large case, and the transmitter does not fit anywhere inside it. These do have a standard Bluetooth connection as well. This is the PS Link adapter, which is fully lossless and kind of a unique selling point with this because the PS Link is designed to work with the PlayStation Portal or with a PS Link transmitter, which is included when you buy the Pulse Explorer or the Pulse Elite headset. Looking at the InZone Buds, so these guys give you, these guys give you 12 hours of battery life and 24 additional hours from the case itself, so a lot more battery life, being 36 in total, and I do like that the transmitter is included. So you're already seeing some differences just by looking at it, not only from a feature standpoint, but very much so in design. So there's a big difference in the transmitter. Now, they work on similar products. So this transmitter works on PlayStation 5, PC, and technically it works on iPhone and Nintendo Switch as well, or Android if you get the correct adapters, because it's basically PlayStation mode only, so it works on a lot of things. This little guy is USB-C. It works on everything as well. You have a switch for PlayStation 5 and mobile, and then a PC switch because there are different features presented on the PC side, which includes game to chat mix. I'm going to get into the functions and customized ability later, but it's an interesting design. So I like the InZone Buds a lot more because you have everything integrated. It's very compact, very easy to travel with. So in addition to that, having that battery life is handy as well. Now, to charge both of them, they obviously have a USB-C charge port. You can see the pairing button here, and on the the Pulse Explorers, you have the PS Link button to put it in pairing mode. So I want to talk about Bluetooth first because this is the first wildly different thing. This uses a standard Bluetooth protocol that works on everything, including iPhone, Android, Windows computers, etc. It also works simultaneously with the PS Link adapter, which is a pretty awesome feature. So if you're using this adapter on PlayStation, PC, or your Portal, because you don't need the adapter for this, you can simultaneously connect to your phone of either platform and listen to that audio at the same time. It doesn't have to switch as like a multi-pairing system, or multi-point. So I love the functionality of that. This is much more picky. So this uses Bluetooth LE and LE only, which means the InZone Buds, as much as I like them for a general Bluetooth earbud, they don't work on Apple's iPhone natively. There's just no way to utilize the Bluetooth protocol. Now, I did use an adapter to convert my Lightning port to USB-C, and when I switched this to PS5 mobile mode, I was able to use the earbuds no problem. You don't have any control over the host volume when you do this. So if you're using it on an iPhone, for example, and you're using this adapter, the volume output of the phone is maxed out, and then you would use the touch controls on the earbuds themselves to increase or decrease the volume. The same general idea works on something like the Nintendo Switch. Both of these work on the Switch. If it's in docked mode, this transmitter is more handy. Otherwise, you can use a USB-A to C adapter and plug it in the bottom of the Switch in handheld mode. I tested that and that worked. This one in PS5 mobile mode natively works on the Nintendo Switch, and it's a lot more sleek. So it's a pretty fun application for that. It's interesting that they both have their own connection quirks. You know, it's unfortunate that I can't use the InZone buds natively on the Portal. However, if you are still close enough to your PS5, let's say you're a parent and you want to play in the Portal in the same room as the PlayStation because the kids commandeered the TV, well, you can still use this transmitter on the PlayStation 5 itself. Then boot up your Portal and you will still get audio on the InZone buds. The only reason that this becomes an issue is if you're going full remote play and you're not even in the same home or within Bluetooth range of the PlayStation itself. So if you're on the opposite side of the house, obviously you're not going to maintain a connection to that transmitter. So you're going to go back to either wired IAMs or headphones, or you're going to be using something like the Pulse Elite or Pulse Explorer in this case. I'm thinking of the Elite because technically you can do that too. On the note of connection to PlayStation and PC and all that, I always like to do something or talk about something called the toilet test. That's what I've dubbed it, because a lot of times you don't take all of your audio product off. You just hopefully mute if you're a respectable human being, leave to go to the bathroom, go to the kitchen, get your snack, whatever it may be. Hence my name, the toilet test. That basically just involves wireless range. And although I don't have as many wireless connectivity issues that some others have reported with the Pulse Explorer, I have had a couple of hiccups with this not maintaining a stable connection. Every now and then I get a hiccup where it cuts out and then it's totally fine. It's never so, it doesn't break immersion so much because it's not frequent enough, but the range is significantly shorter on this. Now you got to keep in mind this is using a lossless protocol. It's actually the first of its kind. This technology is incredibly advanced, and that's where you get some of the clarity and detail from, because it's not compressing your audio stream. That's one little party trick, but we'll talk about more of the sound later. However, when you deal with that kind of bandwidth, especially on the earbuds, which don't have, you know, a larger headset to deal with a bigger antenna, your range is more limited. And I can only get about 20 to 25 feet through one wall before I started having some inconsistent audio performance. The InZone buds are much better in that regard. I can get about 45 to 55 feet on average, and at that point I'm going through a couple walls because it's kind of like a diagonal when I go that far down. I have gotten over 55, but it's more for line of sight. So it just depends on the placement and where your transmitter is located. So let's get into yet another reason why these are incredibly different. And the Pulse Explorer and Pulse Elite represents the acquisition of Audyssey by the PlayStation division. PlayStation bought an audiophile company called Audyssey, which makes planar magnetic drivers. They're excellent drivers. They have incredible speed and resolution, and that's usually what they're known for. And depending on the implementation, they can have very deep bass extension as well, especially with an open back headphone. So Sony acquiring, or the PlayStation Vision, it's actually separate from Sony. PlayStation owns Audyssey, and it's using a planar magnetic driver, which has different sound characteristics. The InZone bud is using a traditional dynamic driver, which people are much more familiar with as far as sound performance goes in terms of the way the bass sounds, the way vocals sound, because it is a little bit different. In addition to the different driver technology, you also get a completely different control system. So this is kind of confusing to me. So the Pulse Explorer, when you put these on, you have a physical volume button to go up and down. You're greeted by a little tone that has a higher pitch when you go up. When you press on the back side and the front side to turn it down, it's a little bit deeper. Then you have a pairing button on your PS Link, the PS Link pairing button below. That helps if you're stuck in a certain mode and you want to connect directly to a phone because it's looking for the transmitter. You can do that to toggle and reactivate your connection. It's also good if you're hopping between the PS5 transmitter and directly to the PlayStation Portal itself. The InZone buds take a very different approach because they actually use touch controls, and they also fit very differently in your ear. Where this one kind of goes up, your volume buttons are on the top. On this one, they are basically, you're pressing in on the side, so you're pressing into your ear canal a little bit. Different controls, however, there's more versatility with the InZone buds. Both sides of the Pulse Explorer are volume up and down. There is no mute button built into the Pulse Explorer. Instead, it relies on you pressing the mute button on your Portal or the mute button on your DualSense edge controller if you want to toggle mute. On this guy, there is no way to mute the microphone using the control or the portal. It's disabled. You also cannot adjust the volume of the InZone buds if you're using a PlayStation, like, you know, the on-screen menu with PS5, the volume icon is grayed out. Party and game to chat mix, grayed out. You can't adjust any of it. Even if you hold down the function keys with the edge controller where you use the D-pad for your shortcut for volume up and down, none of that works with the the InZone buds. You can use all of that with the Pulse Explorer, which is interesting because on the Pulse Explorer, you can't do any of that on here aside from volume. So the controls are kind of confusing. And I probably made it more confusing trying to explain it, to be honest. But the InZone buds allows you to use the InZone Hub software, which I already have installed because of other InZone products. I have the InZone H5 and H9 headsets for gaming, and I also use InZone monitors on my gaming station, the M9 4K 144Hz screens. You can customize the touch functionality because by default, they kind of mirror each other to an extent. You do a combination of short tap, double tap, triple tap, and press and hold to get different commands. And that includes increasing or decreasing volume, muting the microphone. So this is important because I mentioned you can't actually mute yourself on PlayStation with the InZone buds. Well, there is a touch control to do that. My favorite thing though is this syncs to the bud. On InZone, you can remap the controls on both sides separately. So what I did was I used one side for my volume increase or decrease, and then a secondary function for adjusting my active noise cancellation. On the other side, I did a separate function for game to chat mix, you know, towards game or towards chat, and then microphone mute. So I got all these controls that I wanted very easily, and I love that. To me, that's how it should work, and it works seamlessly because once you sync it to the bud, it's not like it has to be actively connected to the PC to maintain those settings. You can just basically remove this transmitter, switch it back to PS5 or PlayStation mode, plug it in your console, and you're good to go. So I actually like the control functionality more. This would only be perfect if it also let me simultaneously use the edge controller for quick adjustments, mainly party chat, because I don't want to sit there and press and hold to fade down or up, depending on what I'm trying to adjust. It's just would have been great to have both. So let's talk about comfort, because yet again, we have some very big differences here between the two. Even if you just look at the design of them, they look very different from each other as far as shape. And that does affect how they go in your ear, how they rest, long-term comfort versus short-term. So we might as well go with the weight first. Some people do care about this. Now this is rounding up to a gram, so don't expect the most flawless weight. I don't have like decimals on the grams. This is showing 12 grams. Now let's switch to the InZone buds. And I'm 10. So they are a little bit lighter. It's within a margin of error, but you know, I think to keep it short, I do like the comfort of the InZone buds more, and I think most people will, because you can see when you look at the depth of the tip versus the Pulse Explorer, this is going to have a much more consistent seal. The thing I've noticed with a lot of comments on the Pulse Explorer buds is they have like no bass. A lot of that people don't realize is how sensitive earbuds or IEMs are to having a perfect seal. When you have a little contact area like this with a flat shell right against what touches your ear, depending on your ear shape, this is going to have wildly inconsistent sound quality results. So if you find the bass completely lacking, use some of the tips that are included. There are different rubber tips. All you have to do is pull it off, and that exposes the nozzle. You get the right tip. Experiment with that, because that's going to make a big difference with comfort. And if it's too big, it'll cause more discomfort or possibly crinkle, and you lose the seal anyway. The InZone buds, with their design and shape, are much more flexible. I get a much more consistent seal. So as far as just plugging them in and going, I always have the same sound quality when I switch to the buds. Now getting into the nozzle size, this is something that I'm really happy that Sony did, is they don't have overly large nozzles, because this part is squishy, but this isn't. And when you have that, if the nozzle's too large, you typically see that on bass heavy IEMs, that can cause discomfort that you simply can't fix because it's a physical limitation. So let's measure it with the little ring right there. I get 5.4 millimeters on the InZone bud. And if I look at the Pulse Explorer, this ring is kind of aggressive, and you can see 6.2. This ring is a little bit on the larger side for some people. This is close to average. I have seen like 6.5 and up, but typically 5.5 to 6 is what you normally expect from an IEM. So they're not overly large. My biggest issue with the Pulse Explorer is the fact that it's such a flat tip that you don't have a lot of flexibility on placement. And it, again, I feel like the comfort factor, the ergonomics, and the way it puts weight on your ear, the Inzone Buds I can just wear for a much longer time. So I do want to give the edge to the Buds here. So now I'm talking on the Inzone Buds so you can hear what the microphone sounds like. I feel like cover a couple other specs and features while we were doing this. So the Inzone Buds do not support Dolby Atmos on PC on the gaming output. However, because you have game to chat mix, even on PC with these earbuds, for some reason the chat mix supports Atmos, although you don't want to use that for gaming. It saps all the bass out, and to me it sounds pretty poor. So it's an interesting thing, whereas the Pulse Explorers do support Dolby Atmos on Windows as well. And now I'm talking on the Pulse Explorer wireless earbuds, and to me it's a big difference in sound quality. These don't necessarily sound that much worse, but they are noticeably quieter. So if you are concerned with how loud your friends can hear you, it's more of an issue on PC and Mac, but on the PS5, for some reason, they still get very loud. And because PlayStation 5 allows you to adjust your microphone volume, it's not really so much an issue there. All right, now I want to talk about sound quality from a measured side, an objective side that takes my opinion out of it. So I want to go over some frequency response measurements from my own rig. If you're not familiar with this, basically the higher the line, the louder it is at that frequency, lower frequencies being your bass. In the middle of the graph, that's your mid-range, which is like vocals and where a lot of detail comes from. And then your higher frequencies are treble. So like that's sound, the airiness of your sound. So when we look at the measurements, you can see that the Pulse Explorer seems to have more bass. Now you can see the blue line is much higher than the Inzone Buds. So if you look purely at the measurement, this is one of the only times where I haven't agreed as much with the interpretation of this measurement from what I hear. Usually I can kind of agree for the most part, and that's simply because of the seal issue I mentioned earlier. The Pulse Explorers are incredibly sensitive to placement. And if it's not perfect, you're not going to get that kind of deep bass at all. You really have to get it just right. And most of the time I couldn't. On my particular measuring rig, because it's a controlled system, I was able to get a perfect seal every time in order to get accurate measurements. Whereas if you look at the bass of the Inzone Buds, it's warmer. When you look at like the 200 hertz area, there's more emphasis there. But because this always has a stronger seal, this sounds like it has more bass. Now that's also attributed to the rest of the frequency response, because as you look at higher frequencies, both of them have relatively nice mid-range, but the Inzone Buds being the green line, there is a little bit of a scoop in the 1K area, which can make that stuff sound, a little pulled back like a vocal, and the treble isn't as bright when you're looking at 3 to 5,000 hertz or 3 to 5 kilohertz. What that effectively does is it creates what's called a downward tilt. So if both of them happen to measure the exact same bass, but one of them has more treble, considering the Pulse Explorer, then this will still sound like a brighter, less bassy earbud or IEM, depending on what you're listening to. On these, because they're a little bit darker up top, while having somewhat similar bass characteristics and a stronger seal, they just sound like a more bass-heavy wireless earbud. It's not overbearing in any way. It also doesn't extend super deep. So if you like that really deep rumbly bass, neither of these are going to deliver extreme amounts of that. However, I do like the more forgiving sound profile of the Inzone Buds. So let's talk about what this means in a subjective or personal level. So I kind of alluded a little bit on the frequency response, how I interpret these sounds. And just to take that further, if you're playing a single story game, I think most people are going to prefer the Inzone Buds just because they have a warmer profile. The vocals and treble being a little bit more laid back just makes them generally more widely usable for different types of genres, different games, different music, whatever you're listening to. It's just a more forgivable sound. Now, on the contrary to that, if you are an attention detail hyper-focused type player, if you're playing competitive FPS and you have to use a wireless earbud for your PlayStation or Portal, then yes, the Pulse Explorer, being as bright and resolving as it is, if you remember I mentioned the whole lossless audio technology, these things are stupid clear. They actually sound very wide as well. So because of that tuning, they sound a little bit more open and spacious thanks to that higher treble region in the 3 to 5K. Overall, they're not too sibilant or sharp. It doesn't hurt, but it does sound a little bit dry, a little bit compressed, and frankly, the bass doesn't have a lot of real impact to it. You hear that bass is there, but there's no sense of slam or depth to the sound. It's very much the opposite here, and even though I would prefer these solely for the sound signature for FPS gaming, when it comes to everything else, I would prefer the InZone buds. And that does include a wide variety of music, because these just work much better for me for rock music, works better for different mix genres, including rap and hip hop. And again, it's one of those things where it may not specifically shine in one particular area, but it's so versatile that regardless of what I'm doing, I know I'm going to get a sound quality profile that's tolerable and I can still enjoy. Driver matching is actually excellent as well, and this is a thing where it means that both sides are in tandem with each other. You know, if they're both supposed to produce the exact same note or audio cue or sound, how identical are both sides in doing that? Is the timing right? And Sony and the PlayStation division executed that extremely well here. They're very, very easy to play in terms of imaging performance because there's no weird phasing or amplitude mismatch issues. So as far as audio cues and positional awareness, I think they did a good job there. There's also very little to no latency. I couldn't really perceive anything. Even with this using a non-lossless codec, I never felt like I was far behind on whatever audio I was playing. I could still play competitively with these, even though I'm not a fan of the microphone of earbuds in general. Purely from a sound side, I could play pretty much anything. To kind of summarize the sound and to tie it all in, these are really bright and they're very lean. For people who are craving bass or a softer sound, the Pulse Explorer is not going to give you that. They sound more brittle, but they are much more resolving and detailed. For those of you who are looking for more bass, you know, a harder hitting impact, if you will, more immersion for movies or single player games, then I think the InZone buds are going to give you that sound profile at the expense of some of that detail retrieval. Now, ironically, I wanted to highlight this because it's kind of like a spiritual sibling of each product. So the InZone buds have a much more similar sound signature to the InZone H5s, being a warmer, darker sounding sound profile, a very universally usable but not excellent at detail retrieval sound profile. Both of them are a little bit more comfortable as well. And just like the Pulse Explorer, the Pulse Elite is much leaner in the bass department. It's also much brighter in the treble, and it just seems like a hyper detailed headset. Both of the Pulse models excel in first-person shooter awareness and detail retrieval, but as far as listening to, if you could only pick one product for everything, I think more people will gravitate towards the InZone products having that warmer, darker sound. Now, the sound quality aside, it might not even matter if there are certain functions and features that you need. Maybe you like the idea of a svelte little compact case that has the transmitter inside. That happens to work on a lot of different products. Or you like game to chat mix on an earbud for PC, well, then these guys are awesome, the InZone buds. Whereas the Pulse Explorer is giving you simultaneous Bluetooth with a native wireless tie-in to the Portal handheld, depending, again, on what your use cases are. I do like the comfort and overall sound profile more on the InZone bud, but there are definitely functionality capabilities that this has that I can't get any other way. If this had native Bluetooth support for my iPhone and some kind of mobile app for built-in DSP for adjusting bass and treble and do my own EQ, then to me this would be an easy win. But there's just a few things lacking there as well, unfortunately. To further complicate it, if you don't need a microphone and you don't need wireless, you just want something that works as an in-ear product, whether it's on the Portal or Edge controller or whatever you're using, you can always just get an IEM. This is mainly if you don't need a mic, but these all sound excellent. You have the Truth-Ear Nova, which is blue. These guys are $150. These are $55. That's the 7 Hertz Critical Red Edition. Amazing IEM. And then the SimGot EM6L is like $110, $120. One of my favorite IEMs for the money. You can technically get 2 of these for less than either one and get incredible sound quality and comfort at the sacrifice of features. You know, you're paying purely for sound with those, whereas these you have Bluetooth and all these other things to consider. So that about wraps up the comparison video, and as you can see, these honestly couldn't be any more different. You even have different transmitter designs, one going in and out, different battery life, planar drivers versus dynamic. You have simultaneous Bluetooth versus noise cancellation. I swear, it's kind of insane how drastically different these approach the same general use case. Touch control versus physical even. So there's a lot to consider. I really hope that by watching this video, you help decide which one is right for you, or maybe it made you think about a different product. Again, I talked about the headsets too. So if you want to purchase anything covered in this review, don't forget to look at the description below. That will help support the channel. Otherwise, purchase it wherever you like. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, because now that I'm finally getting back into things, I will have a lot more content to catch up on. So thank you so much for watching. and I can't wait to see you at the next one. Bye.